Sabrina, welcome to the show. I was going into that with the audience because, as I keep pointing out, Jerome Powell is underplaying it. As a Fed chair, he doesn't want to be hyperbolic because he doesn't want the markets to collapse. We run on faith, the economic system. And if Powell comes out and says, the world is falling apart, everything is on fire, okay, the market would collapse, even worse. And so Powell's like, there may be inflation. Dude, you're talking about A, a recession, B, I would argue stagflation. The dollar has depreciated in value. Imports and exports have dropped precipitously. 9% of our economy travel has dropped, fell off of a cliff. Like, you have all of these key economic indicators. We are literally in a trade war with China. The tariffs are going to make everything much more expensive. So not only is the dollar weaker, but things are more expensive. And Powell is like, there may be inflation. No shit, Sherlock. Sabrina, welcome to the show. That's a long intro. How you doing? You doing okay?
I'm doing great. Good morning, Jamal.
Good morning. And just so people would know, Sabrina Salvati, she is a Boston-based activist, leftist, and podcaster. She has a fantastic show, by the way, at Watch Your Segments. I marvel at how good you are with this. She's a member of Revolutionary Blackout Network, a Black-led multi-network and co-op everyday people, activists, and allies focused on empowering communities through education, organization, and direct action. Yeah, your show is fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Jamal. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You have a great cadence in the way that you are able to, how can I say it, encapsulate a story, if that makes sense. Like, I notice when I do, this is inside baseball, and this has nothing to do with what we're supposed to be talking about, but I'll say it anyway. I'll give you a flower while you're here. You have a great way of being able to hit a story, encapsulate that story in a way where it's a self-contained thing before moving on to another story, while also bringing in the audience, engaging with the chat, and keeping it moving. I don't do that. I have this tendency to blur. Like, even when I try not to, I'm trying to just sit in the box. I'm going to cut this. It's going to move. It doesn't work that way. You do fantastic.
Well, thank you. Well, part of that is due to my producers. Like, it's due to Eric and Corey. They help me a lot in the background. That really does make a big difference. I'm not kidding. Like, before I had a producer, I found myself like fumbling with things quite some time. But I think I've had a lot of practice. I mean, I did study broadcast journalism in undergrad, so I've had a little bit of practice. But thank you so much, and I love your show.
Well, thank you. By the way, 50K. This is a 50K show. I've hit 50K last night.
I called it. I called it. In fact, I was talking to my comrade JB Fawn about this, and I said Jamal Thomas is going to hit 50K.
Yeah.
Pretty soon. Soon. You've been killing it.
I've been trying. Early mornings. Consistent. Day in and day out. It's like, just get up, 5 a.m. Just get up, do it, do the news. But no, I'm glad that you're here. Guess who have come out the woodwork? One, Joe Biden. Joe Biden's come out the woodwork. And Joe Biden came out, gave a speech on Social Security and some other items. I guess he was kind of vaguely talking about Trump deporting, like just disappearing people to El Salvador. That's a whole nother story with the court case. And the appeals court effectively saying, it is shocking the level of mendacity that is coming out of the White House. And the other judge effectively saying, I may hold you in contempt. That's astonishing, right? It's a constitutional issue. But Biden is more interesting to me. Well, he is interesting to me, not more interesting. Biden comes out, gives a speech. He comes out of the woodwork to give this speech. And the wild part about it is Joe Biden, probably more than anybody else, is responsible for Trump even being in the office, for Joe Biden to come out and yell at Trump. And, it goes in a few fronts. A, he didn't want to get out the race. B, he chained Kamala Harris to his campaign. Like, what he said, no daylight, kid. No daylight. Like, basically, you are with me. You're going to defend my legacy. Even if you lose, you're going to defend my legacy. And let's be clear, Obama, at least according to the behind the scenes, his whisper campaign was to push Joe Biden out. And when it came down to it for Joe Biden to leave, There was a speech that Joe Biden was going to give. Clyburn has a conversation with him. And Clyburn's like, dude, you got to put Kamala Harris in the speech. Joe Biden decides, I'm going to put Kamala Harris in the speech. So Obama's plan of having a fight at the convention was blown away when Joe Biden effectively said, I want Kamala Harris to be my next pick. Fait accompli. And so he is probably more responsible. You can argue Kamala Harris just because of the way she ran her campaign. It's her choice. Fair enough. But he has deep, deep responsibility in this, right? And Democrats broadly. Democrats came out against him doing that, by the way. Karen Finney, in where is this, in Reuters, where Karen Finney effectively says, right here, the Democratic strategists and many Democrats are concerned that Biden's appearance will distract from political economic blowback Donald Trump is triggering with his trade war with China and imposing tariffs on countries. Quote, we're finally beginning to see cracks in the armor in terms of Trump's policies, Finney said. You don't want to become a lightning and distract from Trump, and it could make it easy for Trump to change the subject to Joe Biden. So effectively, look, we don't want Joe Biden doing this. We prefer Joe Biden to just shut up and let Trump fail on its own. What that also means, though, is we are not getting involved either. We're not putting ourselves into it. We're not going to say anything. We're not going to go up with any substance. We are not going to present our own vision, our own project 2025 for the Democratic Party. We're not changing. We're not doing anything. Let them fail. That's an astonishing admission. I mean, at least that's my take on it. How do you view this?
Yeah, I agree. I think part of this is because Joe Biden is still offended. I think he's still offended the way that everything went down. The coup that was created to get him out of the race. The book that recently came out that revealed what happened behind the scenes, that even Obama didn't want Kamala, which I think some of us had tried to forewarn people about. It was like, Obama does not want Kamala Harris to be the nominee, which is why he wanted a primary. So it almost feels like Joe Biden is not going to let this go. There's that book. And then there's Jake Tapper wrote a book about this too, about Joe Biden, about how he ruined it apparently for Kamala Harris. So Joe Biden is very much offended. And I will say this. I think the Democratic Party as a whole is making a big mistake by just being silent, by not speaking out more against Trump's economic policies, right? Because people usually vote with their wallet. So to be quiet during this time is obviously a huge mistake. And I think, obviously you see Bernie Sanders and AOC, they are being more vocal about this, but I don't trust Bernie and AOC either. These two people will usher you right back into the same corporate Democrat Party. The DNC is not going to allow AOC to be the nominee. I think we all know this, right? And it's like, so I think that the general consensus from the Democratic Party is to your point, let's just let him fail. We don't have to come up with our own agenda for the people. Yep. We don't have to become a truly opposition party. We just need to let Donald Trump fail, and then we'll win midterms and we'll win in 2028 because people are seeing just how bad he is. And I just think that that's a big mistake. Like, even some of the people who voted for Donald Trump are venting about his economic policies. Mm-hmm. If you look at some of the small business owners, I played a video about this a couple of nights ago. There was a gentleman who owns like a beekeeping honey business. Yep. He voted for Donald Trump. Very much is angry about the tariffs. He was talking about how expensive everything is now for his business. So to me, it just shows that the Democratic Party is not truly an opposition party.
Yeah. So I agree with you and I disagree with you. Mostly agree with you, but I'm going to get to the disagreement first. Yes, they want to just let them fail. I agree with you. They don't want to put up a policy. They're going with the Nancy Pelosi idea of, well, the people will come back. When they get tired of them, they come back to us. We don't have to do anything. They want to win in context, not just win. And what I mean by that is they want to win with certain metrics in place. So we still want to take a huge amount of money from the billionaires. So yeah, we want to make $1.5 billion in a campaign. that compels behavior. It forces them to not be a true opposition party in that sense. Meaning, you can't have an AOC who gets $1.5 billion because they're not going to give her $1.5 billion. You can't have a Bernie Sanders where they're going to give him $1.5 billion because the moment that he says, well, I want healthcare, education, I want to increase your taxes, we're out. We don't need healthcare. We don't need education. We don't need that stuff. And so the party who is trapped by that is like, we need to win with all of this stuff still remaining true. And if we say anything, we can't really put it out there. Like, meaning we can't be a true opposition force. I guess I'm agreeing with you. I don't think there's disagreement. A true opposition force. We can't do it. And so our best position is to just not say anything. Just let them fail. We can't give any substance. And the truth of the matter is, many of the things that they're complaining about, they did. Like the censorship regime that they're complaining about, Joe Biden had his own censorship regime. The papers just came out. I think Tulsi Gabbard released them, where he was fusing tech companies, searches in regards to what people are saying, military history, all of that stuff, and making discernments on individuals and people and how they get jobs in the government and everything else. This notion of disappearing people where we don't need the judiciary branch to do it. If you remember when Obama murdered those American citizens, and the argument that was coming out of the White House was, we don't need the judiciary branch to make a decision on whether or not we summarily execute American citizens. This is stuff that they were also guilty of, even though it might have cut in a different lens. And at the time, Democrats didn't care. And so it's like, okay, how are you being a true, full-throated opposition when you also being hypocrites in the process of being a true full-throated opposition? And we still want to get all that money. How can we get that money if we take on a true opposition, which will be a populist opposition? At least that's my take on it.
Yeah. Well, it was a mistake for the Democratic Party to rely on that money in the first place. Right. So I think that if the Democratic Party wanted to be a truly opposition party, they would have to be grassroots funded. They would have to say, we're not going to take corporate money. We're not going to take lobby money from, of course, AIPAC, right? Like that's a big one. We're not going to take lobby interest. We're not going to take corporate money. And we're just going to have free elections, grassroots. And we all know that this can be done, right? Because Bernie Sanders did this, like squad members did this. We know it can be done. So that is how they would win against the Republican. Like, honestly, if they were to say we're done with corporate money, then you could see things actually, in my opinion, if they had control of the House and the Senate, then you could see things pass for working class people. Then we wouldn't have to sit here and talk about, are we going to raise the minimum wage? I mean, the minimum wage hasn't been increased since 2009. That's insane when you think about it. So we wouldn't have to worry about that. But because they choose to maintain the status quo, and I believe that's what the Democratic Party does, I believe that being a liberal is maintaining that status quo. You want some reforms, but you don't really want to break the system. Because they still want to do that, this is why a lot of people stayed home, Jamal. This is why a lot of people stayed home last year. They're like, look, I'm tired of this. I don't feel like participating in this election at all.
And I don't get anything out of doing so. That's the other part. Like, I've spoken to people. I work 2 jobs. What is the point of voting? They don't see the connection between, okay, I'm giving you my vote versus what you're doing in Congress or what you're doing that's a benefit to my life. The one thing, the big thing that Joe Biden did to me was the $300 to kids. I love that policy. I gave him credit for that because if you live in a society, you're stuck with this basic fact that kids grow up. And how those kids grow up is going to dictate what those kids are going to be, how they're going to be, what they're going to think, all of those things. All of those things are being programmed into that kid as a child. Having more resources is obviously better for the well-being of that child and have a better chance of growing up. It's almost like Social Security for kids. They got rid of it less than a year.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay, so you do something good and then you take it away. I would tell you, if people were getting that, when they went to the voting booths, they would have thought, Joe Biden gave me that. But they don't have that connection. And to your point, being able to say, we're raising the minimum wage, we're making your life better, we're doing material things to make your life better, you will get those votes. The Democratic Party held, the House of Representatives for nearly 50 years straight, up until Bill Clinton gets in office. Third way Democrats, and then it goes sloshing back and forth, back and forth. People couldn't entirely see a difference. So, and to back up your point also, Sanders and AOC has been running around the country, and I don't understand why, frankly. He's not running for office. There's not going to be an election for 3 years, and yet they're getting like 40,000 people at these crowds. But if you're talking about the Democratic Party itself, the guy who they want to put up, it's this guy.
It looked like they were quarter Oscar. Question: who is going to fight this for
Rahm
Democrats? Congresswoman,
that is the guy who they are thinking about putting up. So regardless of Sanders and AOC, who they're instinctually going to, is Rahm Emanuel, Hillary Clinton in pants. Just amazing. Like, it's so out of touch. The level of out of touchness is shocking to me.
Rahm Emanuel, for those who are not aware, he closed over like 40 schools in Chicago.
Yep.
A lot of them in black neighborhoods. Like, this guy is awful. He supported the Iraq War.
I'm sorry, please.
It's crazy. Obama wants Westmore, and I've spoken to family members in Maryland, and people aren't happy with Westmore either. Like that's the thing. Like, people need to know. People are not happy with some of these governors that people like Barack Obama says he wants to run for president.
Mm-hmm. One of the issues that is close to your heart that I often don't get the opportunity to talk about here, but let's talk about it. What is the name of reparations? Reparations. Now, there are, I guess, varying competing ideas on this. Well, you have American descendants of slaves. That's one. You have some people who talk about reparations just in general. Anytime that it's in the political branch, they're like, we need to study it. We need to think about it. And we need to, we need to do the research on it. 5 years later, we're still doing the research on it. Give me your take on this. When Sanders ran the first time around, this was one of the issues that came up. And I remember, I think this was years ago, and I was like, obviously this is money we're owed, it's not coming from, it wasn't like there was a 5,000-year-old vampire somewhere that had a slave. It's the US government that made a policy, and that policy put people in chains and didn't compensate them for the fact of the labor that they were doing. That money is owed. It's not a gift. You're not giving it to anybody. However, politically, it is radioactive. And if you are, and I'm making this case because this is the argument that will be made against it, that if you have a program of something like a Medicare for all, increase the minimum wage, expansion of Social Security, that the people who are at the bottom of the economic scale are immediately uplifted by definition, even with free college. That even though these are universal programs, the people who are in most need benefit the most because those are universal programs, like they don't have. And so by virtue of giving them in the sense of these programs, they're better off. Those are easier and more popular to get across than something like affirmative action that would be somewhat politically toxic. There's going to be a white guy somewhere saying, who's poor, that don't seem fair to me. In which case you're going to get 50% of the country flipping out. These Negroes are getting money for free from the government. They're going to lose their minds. Give me your take against that argument, because that is going to be the argument. I swear to God, that's going to be the argument. And by the way, that was the argument I made back then, even though I would still say that money is old. It's obvious. It's old. Give me a take.
Yeah. Well, there have been candidates that have had that as a part of their political platform. Mm-hmm. Marianne had that. Cornel West had that. Jill Stein. The Green Party does have that, for people who are not aware. The Green Party's had that a part of their platform for years. But I think the thing is this. I think it has to be a mixture of the two. I think you do need a platform that has those universal policies, but I also think you need to pay the debt that is owed, right? Yeah. So this is what we're looking at. 2050 right now, it is predicted that Black wealth will be at $0. When I say Black, I mean collectively as a community, because we really don't own anything. There are Black individuals that own businesses, but we don't, as a community collectively, we don't, right? we are at the bottom, and we've stayed at the bottom. So when we implement those universal policies, yes, that will lift all boats, but we'll still be at the bottom.
Yeah.
And I think people need to look at that and take it for what it's worth. When you look at the cost of living increase in this country, right, which is continuing to increase, the cost of housing, I was talking about this last night, how people can't get ahead because the rent is too high or because home prices are astronomical right now. It's just ridiculous. You're talking about not being able to have home ownership. That's a part of your net worth. Your net worth is what you own minus what you owe. Let's talk about the O part. We tend to have more debt. That's another thing. We're more likely to take out financial aid if we go to college, not because we want to, but because we just don't have that generational wealth there. There's a whole bunch of other things that go into this as well. I think that what people have to understand is that reparations doesn't just help Black people, though. That would help the whole economic infrastructure of this country. And I want to explain why. If that money was paid, the debt that is owed, if that money was paid, that money is going to go back into the economy, because now all of a sudden, if you could not afford to buy a home, now you're going to buy a home. Right. So that's going to help out with generational wealth. But again, that money is going back into the economy. Right. So in a way, everybody benefits from it. I know there's a lot of people that don't agree with it, but I also think the reason a lot of people don't agree with it is because they don't understand what it means. I hear a lot of people say it's a handout, it's a free. No, it's a debt that's owed. Imagine if you worked for 2 weeks straight and you didn't get paid. It's think of it that way. There was also the promise from General Sherman, which was 40 acres and a mule. These things didn't happen. This is why we don't have anything. And as you see now, and I just started a documentary about this, our neighborhoods are being rapidly gentrified in the country. This is happening all across the US, right? So now, not only do we not own anything collectively as a community, but now we're being pushed out of our own communities because of private equity, because of mayors choosing to side along with real estate, with developers. The people in these neighborhoods have no control over that. They have no way to say, no, don't take my home. So this is happening all across the country. And I think, we need more people to speak out for that. When you look at the things that have happened, and I know a lot of people say it's just slavery. It's not just slavery. It's Jim Crow. It's redlining. It's, the things that have been done specifically to the Black community. I was just talking about this a couple of nights ago. And this was the article from Whitney Webb. I'm not sure if you read her new article yet. It's the connection between Diddy and Epstein. So Whitney Webb made that connection and she released part 1. And one of the things that she reveals in that article is just how the CIA was putting drugs into the Black community and how these record labels were working to support the private prisons. Like this is, again, that
I
was
the drugs thing. I didn't know about the private prisons thing.
Yes. Like that was Black communities, and they were using record labels such as like MCA, right? Such as like Death Row. And those record labels were connected to mob ties that were connected to businessmen that wanted to develop private prisons. So we literally have not just a debt that is owed, but you even had businessmen working together with the mob, working together with record companies to take down Black communities. That's a big problem. So this is one of the reasons why I've been saying for a long time, you have to get rid of private prisons. Like this is a whole cycle, a whole like profit for like 4 different groups of people, and they're using Black people to do it.
Private prisons shouldn't exist in general. That is grotesque. Right.
But this goes all the way up the chain. I mean, it's just, and people, for example, people are pointing fingers at Diddy and Epstein. People need to understand they're not the head of the snake. These are the fall guys. The other people, Clive Davis, these people are still out there. So these people have been exploiting, these people have been taking advantage of the Black community for years, and they use other Black people to do it. That is a problem. Bringing the drugs into the community was meant to destroy the community. And so these things need to be discussed and need to be talked about. I do not see us as a community gaining any type of wealth distribution or improving that if that debt is not paid. We're already behind. Like I said, when you compare us to other groups in this country that have been towards the bottom, they have improved. We have been at the bottom and we have stayed at the bottom.
Yeah.
You even have now, Donald Trump wants to remove some of the history about slavery from the museums, from the Black museums. They don't even want you to know what happened.
I saw that.
And who are they protecting?
It's like it makes white people feel bad. I would wager to you that is in his mind. It makes white people feel bad. We don't like to see those things. I agree with everything that came out of your mouth, and you're absolutely right about all of it. I remember seeing this stat where they pointed out Black wealth versus white wealth, and it was like Blacks had like 14,000 and whites had like 150,000. That skew is astonishing. Like that is a mind-blowing stat. And it's not that Black people are somehow different than other people. The situation is different. Like how they came into the country, like you said, redlining, Jim Crow, being kept out of certain jobs, kept out of certain professions. Like all of these things were structural. And if you grow up in that, again, how kids grow up is how those kids turn out. And it is very difficult. Like if you ever watched the Bill Cosby show, and you have Bill Cosby as a doctor, Claire as a lawyer, the life of those kids is fundamentally different than the life of a kid growing up in a dirt poor home. And a lot of that stuff is implicit. Like they don't have to say be a doctor. They don't have to say be a lawyer. It's there, it's ingrained in them. Just when they wake up in the morning, my dad's a doctor, my mom's a lawyer. They go on trips, so they see the world. Their view of the world is different. Their ability to go to college, like they fundamentally see the world differently. It's not their race, it's their context that they're growing up in. And you put all of these other people in this completely screwed up context because of the way they were brought into this country, the way they were cut loose. You're now free slaves. Have at it. Have fun. We're going to have Reconstruction. Oh, no, we're not. We're going to claw it back. Like, these are periods that people went through that they had to live through going all the way up to like the 80s. And so it's not shocking that how we turn out is how we turn out versus other groups. The other groups didn't have to deal with that. So I agree with you. Again, it's a debt that's owed. I agree with the argument. I just don't know how you do it. It's like that's the gap for me. It is a true thing. Everything, your entire argument. How you make it done politically is the catch. I'm sorry.
I recommend talking to Dr. Sandy Darity, who wrote the book From Here to Equality, because he breaks this down. Also in that book, which is really interesting, he explains that this is the reason why baby bonds and canceling student loan debt will not close that gap. And I think that's important for people to read too, because he does the data all behind that. And I think people need to see those numbers. People need to see that let's just cancel student loan debt. That doesn't close the racial wealth gap. So
What
people need
bonds,
to understand it.
I don't know what those are.
So baby bonds were something that I feel was a little bit more popular back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't hear about people doing this today, but it was something that Cory Booker had a part of his presidential campaign in 2020, where he was like, how about we just give people baby bonds? I think it's just like basically like money, I guess that's stashed away for a child. And then I think I'm not 100%, but the way that Dr. Darity explained it is that even that still wouldn't close the racial wealth gap, because again, we're already at the bottom. It's kind of like this. This is what I want people to think about. If me and Jamal had, let's do it this way. If me and Jamal were given $10, like both of us got $10, but Jamal already had 50 and I had 30. Yeah, both of our boats are being lifted, but I'm still at the bottom. It's the best way I can explain it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can never catch up.
No.
And by the way, there's a conceptual part of that too, by the way. Like when you hear Trump supporters say, I want my country back, and you hear it all the time, it's like, dude, what are you talking about? I want your country back. I think what they're talking about is if you think of society as a gradient, and you think to yourself, okay, well, whites have been at the top of that gradient for the entirety of the country, and blacks were somewhat at the bottom. But let's say blacks move up to 5 on that gradient of 1 to 10. Okay, well, we've moved up to 5. There's still a 5-point gap. From our point of view, okay, we're still at the bottom. From their point of view, hey, you're catching up. You're too close. I'm not at the stature that I was. I don't have the relative power that was there prior when you were at 1 or when you were at 0. I want my country back. That's also a conceptual part of that I think is a hedge. Look, and again, I agree with the entire premise of the argument. I'm just pointing out this is what is going to be in people's minds as that gap gets closed. And to your
and
other
why
point,
and why are they so afraid of that gap being closed?
power.
There you go.
It's power. How much power and clout do you have in the context of a country versus how much power and clout do you have in a country? Okay, well, you've closed that gap to 5. That's too much. You've closed the gap to 7. That's too much. It becomes that, even though it's to the benefit of everybody. Like the notion that I don't have money to put into the economy, the speed of money is the point that you were making. If you give me money, I'm putting it immediately into the economy because there are things that I need. I need to eat. I need food. I need shelter. I might get a house. If I get a house, I need to buy furniture for that house. Okay, all of that money is stuff being bought that other people are effectively getting, going into tax dollars and everything else. It's a benefit to the economy. It's not a detriment to the economy. They don't see it that way. And that's unfortunate. That's super unfortunate. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I would look up Dr. Sandy Doherty because and that was part of one of the reasons I was excited to bring you on, because I wanted to have the conversation. I remember you said on your show, nobody ever talks about it. And I was like, this would be great to talk about. As soon as you said it, I was just in my mind this would be great to talk about.
And
Okay.
I just want to say to people who are not aware, during the time, the civil rights movement was not popular. And not only was it unpopular for among white people, my grandparents told me there were black people that were not happy with what Dr. King and civil rights activists were doing.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind.
Was going for the Vietnam War, and he went against it. He was like, why is this Negro talking about the Vietnam War? How dare he? Stick with those black issues. Like, we look at that stuff in this kind of mythical way. Like, it's like you're looking at Hitler. He doesn't seem like a real person. He seems like something else. We look at King that way. Like, he's not a real person. But I remember, if you listen to James Baldwin, and James Baldwin talks about some of that stuff, it is fascinating. I went through this thing while I was binging King speeches, James Baldwin speeches. They are fascinating. And I remember Dr. King one time said how things weren't changing fast enough, because he was politically connected at a certain point. And he was telling these people that things were going to change, et cetera, things were changed fast enough. And this kid says something to him out the way. And he said he goes home feeling some kind of way, like, Dr. King, this kid's talking to me like this and blah, 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 blah. And he's sitting down on the bed. And to me, that was one of the most fascinating things to read, because it made you realize he's a person. He feels some kind of way, right? He has an ego. He has a sense of himself. And this kid is bad-mouthing me. And I feel some kind of way about that kid bad-mouthing me. And then he thought about it. He's like, that kid has a point, though. This isn't moving fast enough. But it's the fact that, like anybody as a real person, he has a sense of self. How dare that kid talk to me like this? I'm fascinated by that stuff. Sabrina, thank you for this. By the way, before I let you go, are there any issues that you want to hit that have been churning in you? I'm starting to ask my guests this, because sometimes they have better topics than I do when we talk about this stuff.
The Harvard thing, I will say, and I did a breakdown of this. I think a lot of people don't understand. So I worked in higher ed for over 10 years, and I do just want to explain something. I'm seeing a lot of people say Harvard University has a large endowment. Why are they getting funds from the federal government?
Right.
So Harvard has the largest endowment, right? So I think that people have to understand what an endowment is. An endowment, that's donations. It's like if I had a GoFundMe when I do my when I'm fundraising for like mutual aid for whatever, right? You may have donated $100. Okay, I have that $100 in Spot Fund or GoFundMe. I'm getting ready for the event. I can withdraw that money and get the items I need for the event. Well, endowments don't work like that. It's not money that you can just reach into when you lose funding somewhere else. And I think that's
I
what
didn't
people
know
don't
that.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that money moves around at universities is it can be mind-boggling. And for those of us who work there, we used to ask these same questions, like, you guys get all this money, but you can't do this, blah, blah, blah. So unfortunately, with endowments, you can't just reach into that money and say, I'm going to take 1 million from our $1 billion endowment, and I'm going to use that to replace the funds that Donald Trump is withholding from the federal government. That's not how it works. And there are restrictions on endowments. So that's a big part of that. Just wanted to explain that to people. But the other thing is, I think people need to understand that some of these federal funds actually help pay for PhD student stipend, like the NIH fellowship, right? Like the National Institute of Health fellowship. A lot of these students that they're PhD students, they're awarded a stipend because that is their job. As a PhD student, that's your full-time thing. You don't have time to get another job. So they're giving you that stipend, which isn't a lot of money, despite what people may think. They give you that stipend from the NIH, right? And I think people need to understand that that money comes from the federal government. So when Donald Trump tells these universities, put Harvard aside for a second, but any of the universities that he's like venting to, when he tells them, I'm going to withhold federal funding if you don't work harder to combat, anti-Semitism, which I think we know what this is all really about.
Yeah. Stalking. Yeah.
That's going to impact those universities. It can also make a lot of the international students that those universities do depend on in order for their revenue to continue to grow. They may decide, you know what, I'm not dealing with all of that. I'm just going to stay home. I'm going to stay in my country and I'm going to attend college here. That's going to affect the economy. People need to know that a lot of these universities depend on international students, especially the undergrad international students, because their families have to show that they can pay all 4 years up front because they don't qualify for financial aid. So some of these colleges have been depending on the international students to increase the revenue. So if they're not there or that decreases, as I saw during the pandemic, that causes a problem. That means that the revenue is going to decrease. And then these universities start to do layoffs. During the pandemic, this happened. They started to and staff is usually first. They started to lay off staff members because the enrollment numbers decreased because of the restrictions around the pandemic. So people didn't want to take the chance. When the enrollment numbers increase, the revenue coming into the universities also will decrease. So I think there's a whole science to all of this, and it is annoying. Maybe these universities shouldn't have been relying on money for the federal government, but those NIH fellowships and those research grants, that's what keeps those labs open at those universities. So some of these schools would be talking about having to shut down whole labs.
Wow. It's a brain drain also. I mean, if you think of nursing students coming from abroad, if you ever been in a hospital, many of those nurses are from somewhere else. Oftentimes they're trying to give money to get nurses because they're so difficult to get. Okay, when you have the situation where people decide to not come to the country because they think the country is nuts, okay, that's a big deal. If you're talking about some of these PhD students who would stay and work at the behest of this country, okay, that's a big deal if they don't show up, if they don't come. You're talking about a brain drain out of the US from people who talent that we were getting from all across the world that just don't show up. There's a clip of a guy, I think it was a woman, who gets deported out the blue, PhD student, because she had a phishing violation 4 years ago that they were using AI to effectively find anybody that they can deport. Okay, wife has kids, all of that stuff gone. That was a PhD student. Like when you hear stories like this, do you really think people are going to be more inclined to come or not? I did not know about the endowment thing. Thank you for that. Because I was like, I think I even said it's like, Jesus Christ, they got billions of dollars in endowment. Why do they effectively need this? To your point, it's a big deal. And if you're talking about Columbia, which that kind of explains why Columbia knuckled under so quickly, Harvard, at the very least, Harvard is like, we are not buckling under this. We're taking you to court. We're having a fight in court over this. As an educator, and I guess this could be the last question. Give me your take on that. Like the notion that they are trying to wrong think, whether effectively there's a right way to think about this. And the reason is obvious. When you take a litmus test of the American public, for the first time, the majority dislikes what Israel is doing, and they think it's a bad actor. It's amazing to me that it took an entire genocide for them to come to that conclusion, considering this has been going on for 70 years, but okay, whatever. I suppose seeing women and children murdered day in and day out on social media had an effect on the American public. So the Biden administration, who was also, by the way, going after those campuses, even though they weren't disappearing people, okay, these are gradients. Trump is trying to now saying, okay, we need to stamp this out. And we need those universities to change the minds of the various people at those college campuses because these kids are freaking out. Kids are usually always the bulwark to the stuff. I mean, you can look at Kent State with that iconic picture of the woman screaming over a dead body where they effectively murdered, where they were shooting at students. Students are always the vanguard of this stuff. Now, always may be too strong, but has a history of it. And so he's going directly at it, full bore. Deportations. I don't care if you got a visa. I don't care if you got a green card. I don't care if you're a PhD student. We're kicking you out of the country. We're cracking down. We're going to try to take what was it? It was trying to take something else from Harvard in order to try to put more pressure on Harvard because Harvard said basically F off. As an educator, this is outrageous, right? I mean, I'm not insane on this.
I mean, guys, it's getting really scary to the point that they're trying to tell professors what they can teach. This is a college. Students pick the courses. You register for the courses that you want to register for, and you have some courses that are required as a part of your major. You guys know how this works. But the students can pick the courses that they want to attend. Notice how they're willing to move, and look at who they're willing to move for. Black students get harassed on campus all the time. You wouldn't believe some of the horror stories that I had to deal with as an advisor at these schools. Things that happened to Black students where they were just told just to let it go. Mm-hmm. You don't see our government move that way to protect Black students on campus. This is what I'm talking about. Pay very close attention to what's happening here, folks. And I've said this before. The biggest threat that we have right now is the threat to speech and censorship. And it's being done in different ways, whether it's through the universities, whether it's social media, whether it's, them choosing who they will allow in as press at the White House. And I know people who are independent media that did try to get press access at the White House and they were told no. And it's very obvious, even with that, they're looking for the conservative influencers, yes. Right? So this is the biggest thing. Like, if they take this away, what do we have left?
The First Amendment is first for a reason, right? I mean, it's there first for a reason. I'm going to let you go. But Europe and the way that Europe is freaking out, they don't have a First Amendment in Europe. And as I used to tell my ex girlfriend, who's from Austria, she's from Europe, our amendments is a direct response to the nonsense y'all were doing. Like that First Amendment is there because the king didn't want people saying stuff. And so they was like, speech is first. We need the ability to talk, to get something across and tell the government that they're effing it up. And if you lose that capability of telling the government they're effing it up, then you just got propaganda. And whether that's the Biden administration who decides, we're going to work with organizations to censor certain things we don't particularly like and get social media companies to go along with it, or whether that's Trump, who's doing the same thing of disappearing people who say something on social media that he doesn't particularly like. It's the same thing. All of it is horrible. All of it is bad. People can make the argument, okay, well, what about Nazis on the thing? Okay, fair enough. That's a sticking point in the argument, right? That's always the boundaries of the argument. But we're not talking about the boundaries. We're talking about just regular speech that is often true. You can get it wrong, but the First Amendment allows for all of it. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Sabrina, Salvati, you are phenomenal. Definitely check out her show. She's awesome. So, Sabrina Salvati, she's a Boston-based activist, leftist, and podcaster. She's a member of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, a Black-led multicultural network and co-op of everyday people, activists, and allies focused on empowering communities through education, organization, and direct action. Thank you for this. You're awesome. I love your show. By the way, where can people catch your show?
You can find me on YouTube. It's Sabby Sabs. And you can find me over at Revolutionary Blackout Network.
Excellent. What time does it come on? It comes on at 8 o'clock, if I remember.
Oh, yeah. Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and every other Sunday, typically in the evening.
Okay. Oh, you don't, for some reason I thought it was 8 o'clock. It's not a set time?
It is. So Tuesday is 7, Thursday and Friday is 8, and Sunday is 5.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That is a lot to keep up with. God bless you for doing so. You have a good one. Thank you for this.
Thanks, Jamal.
Bye-bye. She's awesome. And her show is